Welcome. If you've spent any time in dating content online, you've probably noticed something. No matter what the topic is, no matter what platform you're on, a lot of it eventually funnels into the same conclusion. All women are entitled, all women are delusional, all women don't know what they want, and women ruin dating, and, well, they're all terrible, really. And it's presented with absolute certainty. Studies, clips, screenshots, rage podcasts, TikTok stitches, long threads explaining why men are victims and women are the problem. So, I want to slow this down a bit and ask a much more interesting question. Not, is this true? But, why is this the dominant story online? Because once you understand that, the whole thing starts to fall apart rapidly. And the first thing that has to be said is, because everything else depends on it really, is this. The internet is not a real place. It does not necessarily show normal people. The internet does not surface normal behavior. It definitely surfaces extreme behavior. Calm, reasonable women do not go viral. Emotionally regulated dating advice does not get stitched. Balanced takes do not generate outrage. They don't get clicks, they don't get views, they don't get likes. What does get amplified? Well, extreme demands, confrontational opinions, entitlement language, absolutist statements. Not because they're common. I don't think they really are what we're seeing online. I don't think it is really that common at all. But these things do provoke reactions. So when men scroll through dating content and we see video after video of women saying wild things, they're not seeing a representative sample. It's the truth. We don't. What we're seeing is the loudest 1 or 2% or just two crazy women basically replayed endlessly. And repetition creates the illusion of prevalence. Rich content turns anecdotes into quote unquote truth. You know, here's how the quote unquote women suck, women are terrible narrative actually gets built. You have one bad date, maybe two, maybe three. We see one TikTok clip. We see a screenshot. We see one reaction video. We get one outlier experience. And that gets framed as this is how women think. This is how women are. And then it gets reinforced by other men's bad experiences. We stack up, we pile on top, selective studies. Oh, we're good at that. And a shit ton of comments full of resentment and bitterness. At no point does anyone stop and ask whether this is a filtering problem instead of a gender problem. The internet doesn't reward accuracy, it rewards confirmation, affirmation. If you're already frustrated, content that validates those frustrations, well, it feels like clarity. It does. It confirms what you're feeling, what you're thinking, even if it is really distorting reality. And dating apps are a massive accelerant for this narrative. Dating apps basically pour gasoline on all of this. They expose men to constant rejection or silence, which happens. They inflate perceived competition, and well, they do. They remove context from human interaction, and they reduce people to quick judgments, swipes left and rights. So men start experiencing dating as cold, evaluative, transactional, and asymmetrical. It's true, I get it. They then go online looking for explanations about what is going on. And of course, the loudest explanation available is women are the problem. And to be honest, I don't think women are the problem at all. Some of them are, sure, but then we can also say the same thing. All men suck, and well, we don't. The explanation is emotionally satisfying because it removes uncertainty, assigns blame, restores our egos, and it creates a villain, it creates an enemy. It pinpoints, no, not pinpoints, it pins men and women against each other. And that is a very dangerous thing to do because, well, what we're looking for is a mate. Women are looking for a man to, build a relationship with, and men are looking for a woman to build a relationship with. So, we need to come together and, form like Voltron. That's what we want to do. But if this is what we're doing, if these are the explanations that are satisfying, it also quietly kills motivation. The women in these videos, they're not dating, they're just performing, guys. And this part matters. A lot of the women online, we use them as proof of, the all women are terrible narrative. And they're not expressing genuine dating preferences. They are not performing content. But they are rewarded for being provocative, sounding superior, setting extreme boundaries, humiliating hypothetical men. That's not dating advice. It's attention farming. That's what it is. But men don't experience it as content. They experience this as a preview of what dating will be like. And you combine that with a few bad dates and the online dating apps, and well, there you go. And that creates dread before the first date even happens. And here's some truth. The all women are terrible narrative, it doesn't empower men either. It just puts blame on women, but it doesn't help us guys at all. It's also lazy thinking. It makes men suspicious instead of curious. It makes men defensive instead of open. It makes men withdrawn instead of selective. And what happens is men stop engaging. They stop engaging honestly. They stop approaching. They stop investing. They stop giving women the benefit of the doubt. And that's the opposite of what we want when we're looking for a woman to build a relationship with. And men do all these things not because they hate women, but because dating starts to feel, like I said, like we're pinned against each other. And that makes dating extremely exhausting. So the men most affected by this narrative aren't really angry incels or bitter extremists. Usually it's just the normal guys who quietly decide this is not worth the hassle, this is not worth the emotional cost anymore. They don't rage, they just disengage. And the irony nobody talks about is the same men who complain that women are cold, entitled, or unapproachable often consume the content that trains them to expect hostility, interpret boundaries as disrespect, and see dating as a power struggle. So when they do date, they show up guarded, less warm, less playful, less curious, less of all the things that you need, less of all the good qualities that you possess and that you want to put on display. And then they confirm their own expectations. You see, that makes sense. The circle is complete. And it's not because women suck. It's because mistrust is contagious. You know, miserably, no, miserableness, misery, that's the word I'm looking for. Misery enjoys company. Isn't that the saying? And this is not me defending women. Not at all. I'm not defending women. I'm not defending men here. I'm just looking at this, from a more neutral position, I think. I want to be very clear here. This is not a claim that women are perfect and that we should never blame women for the shit they do. You know, this is not about saying that some women aren't entitled or that all women behave nice. No, there are definitely women who behave badly, and there are women who have unrealistic expectations, and there are women who are awful dates. But then again, so are men. We're not angels either. And saying, all these things like women are this, that, and the other, but we guys, oh, we're just the good guys. We're just looking for a nice, cute woman to build a life with. But women only want the opposite. That's a bunch of nonsense. And the problem isn't acknowledging bad behavior. The problem is that turning bad experience, um, no, let me put it differently. The the problem is that we're turning bad experiences into a worldview, and that is a serious issue. And once you do that, dating stops being about connection and starts being about survival. And nobody thrives there. Not women, not not men. So what's actually happening? Well, what's actually happening is much simpler than the internet makes it out to be. You're seeing a distorted sample, amplified extremes, algorithmic rage loops, frustration looking for meaning. And instead of being told this is a noisy environment, don't draw big conclusions, we do exactly the opposite. You know, we're being told this is reality, adapt or suffer. That's not wisdom, guys. That's indoctrination. Really is. It's really silly, but it is. The internet keeps telling men that women suck because outrage is profitable, resentment is sticky, and nuance doesn't scale well. But dating is not the internet, and the internet is not a reliable narrator for human behavior. If you let rich content define how you see the opposite sex, you don't become sharper. You become smaller, more closed, more tired. And fellas, that's not strength. Understanding the distortion doesn't mean ignoring bad behavior. It means refusing to let the loudest voices define your entire experience. Because once you stop consuming content designed to make you bitter, dating stops feeling like a battlefield and it starts to feel more human again. So that should be the takeaway from this episode. I hope this was useful, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye bye.